Demiser the Demiser of the band Demiser, and you are watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 291 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Demiser the Demiser from the band Demiser. Sir, how are you doing today, Demiser
I'm
the
doing.
Demiser?
I can't. Yeah, I can't hear it enough, man. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's a great evening here in Georgia, where I'm at. How is it over in, I believe, South Carolina?
Probably about the same as it is in Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so awesome to have you here. So, kind of what I want to talk about is I want to talk about like your musical history, as I want to talk, as well as I want to talk about the new Demiser album, "Slave to the Scythe," coming soon. So, take me back to young Demiser, the Demiser. So, kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to be a vocalist?
Um, Merciful Fate was the first real band that I got into. I was probably 12. My dad worked at a bookstore, and I would always hang out in the magazine section, and just kind of drawn to like the Metal Hammers and stuff like that, and flipping through, and I saw that picture of King Diamond with his, microphone, and I just thought that it was fucking cool, and that the name stuck with me, Merciful Fate, and then uh, my mom had one of those. If you remember those like CD clubs, they would mail out
Yeah,
um
I think I remember some of those
pamphlets, so
and
you could
like
go
the
thing
the
and pick
little
three.
inserts.
Pick,
I still see some of
yeah,
those, even like the old CDs I would get. They would always have like probably a magazine or something that's pretty much non-existent now.
yeah. So she would pick two, and she'd always let me pick one. And I went through and I saw Merciful Fate, and I checked it, and it was the album. I'm trying to think which one it was. Maybe Into the Unknown, I think is what it was.
Nice, because a lot of people always, when it comes to Versal Fade, people say think of the first two albums. They don't pay attention to the rest.
Yeah, well, that was the first one, and then I dove a little deeper, and got on board with Melissa and Don't Break the Oath and stuff. But um, yeah, that was my first introduction to, like, I was like, oh my god, this is the most evil thing I've ever heard at that time, and listen to it every night, in the bathroom, when I took a shower or bath or whatever, and so that was my introduction, and then when I was maybe a freshman in high school, my friend's older brother uh, played for me in Pale Nazarene, and just the vocal range was enough to make me be like, "That's insane and disgusting," and I want to do that.
Yeah, nice. And so I was like doing my research. I believe like one of your first bands was called Locusta. So tell me about that, because I'm digging deep. Like I don't think nobody ever talks about Locusta.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, shit. We were a band for over 10 years. Um, we did a reunion show up in uh I think it was in Cincinnati, maybe 2 years ago. But that's probably, I mean, shit, we did it for a real long time, and that was more of like a kind of melodic, technical death metal type thing.
Yeah.
Um, but and I had a great time when I did it. I just, I think when I moved to South Carolina from Ohio, I decided I wanted to
Yeah.
just do something a little less serious and a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
And
Because that
when I
first
say,
Locusta album was really great.
oh, thank you. We have a whole second album, and it's done. It's just will probably never be released. No one's ever going to hear it.
Yeah. Wow. I'm really curious to hear that.
I could probably send it to you.
Hell yeah. Totally. And then I also want to talk a little bit about Nailbat, because I don't think there's really much any
Yeah.
information on that.
No. I think we released one song, and you can only get it on like Reverb Nation.
Yeah. I'm surprised
That's
that
the only place I
that
think you can listen to.
yeah, I'm surprised that site's still even going today.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, but then tell me about forming Demiser, because the band formed in 2018 in South Carolina. So how did you get to know everybody in the band?
I had known Grave Pisser for a while. He had, from just playing in Lacusta and other bands, and he was in bands, and so we had played shows, together in the past before I moved to South Carolina. Um, and when we formed Demiser, it was just me and a guy named Robbie Schwer, and we were just a two piece. I was living in uh, Charleston, South Carolina. We got Grave Pisser on board, and then he started writing riffs that I couldn't play drums to. My style is very simplistic, very Venom style playing, and I just couldn't do it. To get the sound that we really needed, we had to find somebody else. So we met in Fester at an ASM show that I had booked up in Greenville after I moved to Greenville, and he mentioned that he played drums. We set something up with him, and Peyton knew Defiler, and I knew Falamancer from Charleston because he was living down there at the time. He's up in North Carolina now. But we kind of just was like, hey, we're the only ones around here that are into this shit. Like, let's see what this sounds like.
Yeah.
And we already had a couple songs written with me and Robbie and Grave Pisser, and everybody kind of sat down together. Robbie moved to Philly, but that first practice that we had, or just jam or whatever, we were like, okay, this is sick, this is fun.
Yeah,
Let's roll with it.
Yeah, which should eventually become that first demo, Surrender to Sin, in 2018, which I love. It's just three songs, but it's just kick ass, from like Demiser to Demiser, Persinius Raid, and Warfuck Demon Lust. It's all just a banger songs from beginning to end. And so where
Yeah,
was that recorded at?
that was recorded at Infester's house, just in his room.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just did that where we were meeting up to practice, and at that time it was just me and Fester and Grave Pisser. We had gotten Defiler and Falaman on board, but I don't think they had learned the songs yet. So when we did record that, it was just me, Grave Pisser, and Infester at the time, who was going by Raw Fucking Vomit at that
Yeah.
time.
Hell of a name. Yeah. But then tell
Throwing
me about
behind everybody.
yeah. Yeah, but then tell me about making the tour promo 2019. I thought that was another good release. I love it, like Raw Fucking Vomit, offering, bringing, even you also did like a
Yeah,
cover of Witching Hour by Venom. So what made you guys decide to cover that song in particular?
just Venom's one of my favorite bands ever. So I was already like, when we started playing this, Venom was a big influence, and so I was just like, if we're gonna cover a song, and we're gonna do the first, whatever the first one is, like, let's do it as a Venom song. So we were thinking about doing that one. We thought about Angel Dust as well, and Live Like an Angel, Die Like a Devil, and we ended up going with Witching Hour. Um, it just fit Demiser better, I think. So we just rolled with that. But we knew it was going to be a Venom song.
Yeah. And then
And that promo we recorded that tour EP with Rick, um, who's now in One of Nine, that black metal band from Charlotte, who are fucking amazing. That band is insane.
nice, nice. And then you started playing around South Carolina a little bit, and of course, like that, like the pandemic happened, and during that time, because I've always asked artists this, because during the whole pandemic, sort of, I know it kind of like fucked up the music industry, and a lot of bands would like would say it would be a hard time, and then also like would inspire them to like make music. So I'm guess for you personally, how did like the pandemic sort of like affect Demiser?
Um, I don't know if the pandemic. I mean, we still got together and practiced and stuff like that. Like as long as we were safe, everybody, we all tested shit, went to practice. um, and all of that. I think we took like the first month or so off from seeing each other when it first came around. Um, but yeah, I don't think it really slowed us down. If anything, we were just going stir crazy, not being able to play anywhere. So we took that time and we just focused it on writing and finished writing the album. Uh, during that lull of shows.
Yeah. And then of course you got signed to believe your first label, or was it actually like just independent was through the gate Eternal. So what was sort of like the
Yeah.
thought process going into making like the debut full-length Demiser album?
Well, I mean, we knew we wanted to put out a full length album. We had enough songs wrote at that point. I think we scrapped a couple and we left the ones that flowed the best together. And Boris Records put that out of Atlanta.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and there were a lot of bands kind of started with them too. I mean, Cloak started
Yeah, my
there,
boys.
and they're doing well.
Yeah,
And
Scott's a homie.
yeah, I like Scott. Um, and then yeah, I mean, so they put that album out and they did a really good job of selling it. I mean, it did. The album itself did insanely well. I think pre all the records sold out on pre-orders. So that Scott, who is one of the co-owners of the label, reached out and he's like, "Hey guys, we're going to do a repress. It's actually the first repress we've ever done as a label because we don't even have any more, and the record's not even out." So
Yeah.
we felt really good about that. Um, and yeah, but I mean, we knew we wanted to do a full length record. Like I said, we kept the songs that flowed the best and just kind of went from there.
Nice. And then when it came out, did you start like touring like outside of South Carolina for the first time? So what was like that whole like out cycle like in terms of shows and stuff?
We had done one tour previously, kind of up the East Coast, into a festival in Lexington that is thrown by some friends of ours called Blood of the Wolf Fest in Lexington, Kentucky. And hopefully they bring that back. It's been a couple years. But so that was the only thing that we had done previously going up the East Coast. We talked with Cloak um, around that time, and we agreed to do a tour together. It was like one of the first tours that happened right when COVID was letting up. So clubs started having shows again, and we were like one of the first ones to go out. So that tour actually did really well for the most part. Um, and being off of a fresh album did really well for us. Um, but yeah, I mean, we had a great time on that run. Cloak were great, tour mates, and would do again.
Nice. Nice. And then now we have the new album, Slave to the Scythe, which comes out on the 23rd. Third. So what was sort of like the whole rundown of that in terms of like the writing and recording for that?
Well, a lot of the record was probably finished in this, like writing it was finished in the studio for that one. I was writing lyrics even still while the guys were in the studio, and they contributed quite a bit to that as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, the recording process was felt very rushed as well. I mean, we only had a couple weeks to get it done. Um, our recording engineer had moved out to California and was only back in town for a handful of weeks. So we only had that amount of time to finish writing the songs, recording them, and getting the album done.
Yeah.
He was able to mix it out in California, but getting the recording process done and getting the songs fleshed out and finished in the studio, was fairly stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. And musically, did you wanted to continue in the same vein as Through the Gate Eternal, or being as this is the second album, you wanted to try something new or different that Demiser hasn't done before?
we wanted it to be a continuation, but putting another foot forward. So we tried we did a couple new things with this one. There are some of the riffs are a little bit more violent. We even break off into um, I some like immortal style riffs and stuff like that here and there. Um, we definitely tried to open up the door a little bit for us to kind of make uh, creative calls that may not, have flown on that first record. But we're the way we write songs anyways is, if it's a fucking cool riff, whether it's a thrash riff or a black metal riff or a new wave of British heavy metal riff or some rock and roll shit, if it sounds good, and it flows with the song and it works with the song, we're going to use it. And we'll try a lot of different ways to make things work before we either decide to scrap or to use. But I think we did kind of use that first album as a stepping stone, and we took that next step on this album. I think it's a good continuation, but I think it opens some doors as far as musicianship and stuff like that goes.
Yeah, and did you feel any like pressure to follow up through the gate Eternal? Because being with this being that this is the second album, because usually with the first album you have like your entire life to write it, and there was a lot of hype with the first album. Did you feel like pressure to follow up through the gate Eternal going into to Slave to the Scythe?
Um, we wanted it to be as good for sure. And so there was definitely a lot of nitpicking and throwing pieces out and throwing songs out involved with making this record. We're all very happy with how it turned out, the songs and the sound quality and everything. We're all very happy with it, and like I said, think it is a good continuation. It was a little bit of pressure. Obviously we didn't want to put out something subpar, and we never want to do that. But when it comes down to it, I think the songwriting's there, the songs are there, the sound is there. It took a little bit longer than anticipated, but worth the wait, and hopefully everybody else feels the same way.
Yeah, same. I already loving like the first two singles, Hell is Full of Fire and Infernal Bust. I always like it, and I love it. And sort of like talking about it, sort of like being the second album. Are you like a bit nervous at all, like when it's released? Because there's always like bands that would always have like that sophomore slump. Like, how do you feel about like Slave to the Scythe coming out soon?
I'm excited for it to come out. The album's been done for a minute now. Obviously there's always, sometimes you wait a year before it even comes out after the record's, done being recorded, just for, press time and stuff like that. But no, I mean, we're ready for this to drop. I mean, we're real excited. We were really excited to get those singles out. Especially that second one that just came out a couple weeks ago, Hell is Full of Fire. We had a lot of fun making that video. And yeah, I mean, I don't think we're nervous. Not any of us are really nervous at all. I mean, we want it to do well since it's our debut on Metal Blade. But I mean, I think it'll do it just as well as the first one. I mean, if not better.
Yeah, yeah, and then of course like this album is like the first album on Metal Blade, and so what is it like working with them?
Easy. I mean, they are good at being in communication. They kind of give us, tips of, how to go about pushing, singles and just doing different types of, PR moves and stuff like that. They've been doing this a long time. So, we're doing our best to listen to them as much as we can. And when we're able to, some of the stuff that they want us to do, we have a hard time doing just because we all still live so far away from each other, for the most part. But, we try to get as much of it as we can, and, listen to the wisdom that they have.
Yeah. And and what do you think is sort of like the overall like message and sort of like the theme behind Slave to the Scythe?
The overall what? You cut out.
The overall kind of like theme and message behind the album.
Oh man, hell, fire, hellfire. You know, pretty much that. Cocaine, motorcycles. It's, I mean, it is a Demiser album through and through. I mean, we take pieces of uh, literal conjurations and satanic chants, and we fit them into our songs lyrically. And then we have our hypersexual and hyper drug fueled and speed fueled songs as well. But it is definitely it's a record for a fucking maniac.
Yeah.
So, which we all are. So that's what we put out.
Oh yeah. And then talking about like the lyrical content on the album and sort of like all your and of course the previous one, when it comes to like making lyrics, do you have to like put yourself in like a certain mind frame in order to come up with lyrics, or just the lyrics just come like naturally and organically?
I mean, yeah, sometimes they do. There are times we'll sit down, or I'll sit down, and within 10 minutes, there's a fucking song, and it just came out. And I love when that happens because it's hell of a fucking time saver. There are other songs where I have we have an idea for it, or there's maybe a one lyric that we have for the song, and we try to base it off of that. Um, and a lot of times the other guys will throw in lyrical ideas and stuff like that as well. Sometimes they've come up with even the whole song lyrics, and I'll just edit them in or change some words here and there, or edit them around, or move some stuff around. And the lyrics are primarily theirs as well. But it is a great joint effort with that. But there are other times where I'll sit down with a book in front of me, and I'll have an idea for a song, and I'll go through the book and pick and pull ideas from that, um, and go from there. I mean, Hook and Torment, which was a video that we put out from the first album, um, that was I wrote that while I was reading Dante's Inferno.
Nice. And then
Uh,
talking about like you guys' live show, is there like a similar energy to like playing live as to opposed to recording? Is there any like similarities between the two, or they're kind of like completely separate from each other?
I kind of feel like they're very separate. I mean, the songs are there, and we play tight, but um, they're faster. Usually in a live setting, they're a little bit more raw. Um, Things change up here and there. It's definitely its own thing. The energy levels are a lot higher. Uh, you know, it's a very different vibe, but in a very good way.
Right, nice. Nice. And then of course, like talking about like your character, Demiser, the Demiser, is that almost kind of like in a way you're like portraying like a character during when you're like playing live and recording thing, or is that almost kind of like in a way kind of like an extension of like who you are personally?
I mean, it's an extension of who I wish I could be all the time, but that wouldn't get me anywhere in life. So uh, even with all of our pseudonames and everything, we're like I said, we're all fucking maniacs, but we're maniacs on the fucking weekend, or if we're on tour or something like that. It doesn't consume our whole life. So we take that aspect of that maniacism, and we put it on stage.
Right. And so kind of like in the end to sort of wrap things up, what's next for Demiser? I know we got Slave to the Scythe coming out August 3rd, 23rd. Is just anything else with the release of the album that you would also like to plug in terms of touring and stuff, if you're allowed to say?
Sure. Well, we don't have any tours on the books yet. We're looking to get more on the road uh, towards next, or probably next year, early next year, first quarter maybe. And but right now we have a show coming up in Charlotte on the 10th. By the time this comes out, that's probably going to be over. And then we're playing Mass Destruction Metal Fest in Atlanta
Yeah.
this year. It'll be our second time on that. But that'll be our first Atlanta show here in a couple of years. So hopefully people come out to that one. And then I think we have something towards the end of the year that we haven't announced yet, but that's going to be in November. It's probably going to be in Columbia, South Carolina.
Nice. So thank you, man, for taking the time to do this interview. It's just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Yeah, buy the record. Go listen to the singles, watch the videos if you haven't. It'll hopefully be enough for you to want to buy the record. And if you haven't listened to the first album, go back and listen to that. So you have a catalog of new shit you can lend your ears to.
Awesome. So everybody, Demiser the Demiser from Demiser